Hi friends, it's Brittany at Ink and Papyrus and welcome back to my channel. Have you ever heard the old adage, don't judge a book by its cover? Well, that's exactly what I am going to be asking you to do today. I know this thing is ugly on the outside, but it is a gold mine of ideas. And that's why I call this my big junk journal idea book. I don't know if you remember, but about a year ago I did a video on why I wanted a junk journal idea book and how I actually set this up. So if you're interested, I will link that above and in the description box. But essentially, this book is such a great reference point and source of inspiration and ideas. Every time I have an idea for a new layout or a new technique or project, I try and update my idea book. But I've been very lazy recently and I've done a ton of projects in the meantime without updating my idea book. So I figured I would take you along for the ride today. We can update my idea book together and hopefully give you a ton of inspiration and project ideas along the way. I have to say it's been way too long since I updated this. And today I am going to update it with you guys here with me and hopefully give you some project ideas and inspiration along the way. I did my first video on this idea book when my channel was very new. A lot of you guys have probably never seen anything about this before. So I'm just going to give you a quick little tour through the few pages that I already have complete. So I definitely need to finish what is inside here, but as you can see, this first part of my idea book was really just practicing grid journaling and some of the techniques I had learned in terms of, you know, how to grid journal and the different ways that you can grid journal, what to put in your grids. And as you'll notice, I have here freehand grid journaling, different shapes and sizes. And that just basically signals to me, I try and put a quick summary of what the page actually is. And then obviously there will be a corresponding notation in this little index section. Grid journaling, layout using planner pages. I left 3 and 4 blank. I guess I have to update those. 5. 5th page, grid journaling freehand. As you can see, I was really exploring grid journaling. Watercolor doodles, washi tape snippet rolls. I even have used this idea book to place like templates of things that I had to measure because I don't want to ever have to go back and figure out the dimensions of certain embellishments I've made. So this is just such a handy way to keep ideas. How many times do we do a project or come up with some idea that we never actually revisit, or we're like, how did we do this? And we don't have any point of reference. So this is perfect. This is page 6 here. So you'll see that I have all of the pages labeled because that will make it much easier to keep track of in the index. So this was grid journaling with quotes, and the idea here was I was exploring making different kind of like non-linear grids. Here's your classic grid journal, and the idea here was that I grid journaled and my grids were composed of collage. I love the idea that you can basically make a ton of different sections of themes on a single page, and it makes it so much less intimidating to start on a blank page when you know you have 6 shots or however many shots to get it right. Plus, if you're doing a collage or something like this, there's sort of a formulation: paper, fabric, die cut, watercolor doodle. And it's repeated, and so you almost have time to enjoy the process and exert your creativity in figuring out what little collage you're going to make as opposed to what you're going to do. I hope that makes sense, but basically there's an expectation and a general kind of formula, so you're not like sitting there, you know, thinking about, oh, what am I going to do with this page? This here was my attempt to grid journal again up against a bright layout with gesso, and I was really excited about this because I really wanted to be able to use a grid journal pattern to create different writing room. This was my attempt at grid journal with more collage, and I used my charcoal pencil and a bunch of washi tape and some mixed media and mark making here, and I was really happy with how this came out. This here was grid journaling with song lyrics with a watercolor background and some stamping. I really liked how those came out, those song lyrics. Grid journaling grids made up by watercolor splashes, song lyrics over top. This next section, you guys know I love my watercolor doodles. There's something so magical about painting something, even if you can't paint, and doodling over it. It just comes out looking so amazing every time, even if you can't paint or draw, which is the magic of the watercolor doodle. And here I have examples of several different watercolor doodles I like to make: flowers, leaves, hedgehogs, which was a new recent discovery, an owl, a rainbow. And I can tell you one of the projects we will be updating in this today is we will be adding some additional watercolor doodles of things that I've learned how to create. I have so many projects to share with you guys today because I have not updated this idea book like I should have. Flowers, snails, owls, oh, jellyfish, I forgot the jellyfish, mason jars, that's an absolute favorite. Mushrooms, oh my gosh, an absolute favorite. I also have many other, I drew, so because this is an idea book and a point of reference, sometimes we forget the different kinds of things that if you are a doodler and want to draw, some of the different ways you can create the mushroom to kind of give it some more depth. And so that's what I sort of tried to do there. And that will save a little bulk and a little bit of room. As you can see though, the spine is huge. So I'm hoping that this will get me where I need to go for a long time. Narwhal and a butterfly. This next section details how to make a washi tape snippet roll. And basically what I did was take parchment paper and layered washi in sort of a repeating pattern on the parchment paper, and then added some different embellishments over top. And then once I was done with each individual little piece of parchment paper, I would sew it to the next, and then sew it around the next, and then basically attached it to the paper spool. And I really enjoyed this project. For the projects that I have done full videos on, I will try and link them above and in the description box in case you guys are interested. This next section is on magazine ephemera and a ton of examples. These are some paint chips, some journaling cards that I use pictures of planets, and I tried to include some other sort of non-traditional kind of images where you wouldn't immediately think, oh, let me put that in a journal or make something out of it. But I was really excited to, I am like a huge, I'm just a huge fan of using magazines in crafting, and I think it's an underrated craft supply and often forgotten about craft supply. And I recently discovered how much of you all also love crafting with magazines. I published a magazine video recently, and you guys left me so many comments and so many different ideas, so thank you so much for that. I will also include those videos if you are interested in learning more about crafting with magazines. This was very imperfect, so I love the image, but that's why this ended up in the idea book. Sometimes in our idea books, we can include helpful points of references, and we can also include gone wrongs. And obviously I did not do a good job at all of gluing or sewing this down. There are a ton of bubbles everywhere, and magazine images can be a little bit difficult to work with, so some of it is life lessons learned. I love also using seed catalogs. Here is a seed packet I made using some die cuts and just sewing together some paper backed with some magazine images rather, backed with paper, some stamping, This is a magazine Polaroid, which I love. So I personally absolutely love crafting with magazines. This has to be one of my absolute favorite paper dolls I've ever made. And I wrote all about her and different ways that we can accessorize our paper dolls, just so I wouldn't forget, and some of the themed paper dolls I've made in the past. Here's another absolutely lovely paper doll. Now at the bottom here, I just included a paper where I can write some additional ideas for accessorizing the dolls. I haven't gotten to that, but I will very shortly. Look, I even gave her an anklet. This is a page where I was just playing around with some of the different things that you can do with paper bags and brown paper packaging, and I love this. And I have to tell you, if you've never experimented before, brown paper packaging embosses so well. And it looks so good. If you want to really accentuate the embossed areas, you can put down gold gilding wax, or what looks even better is some white gesso. It looks amazing. Here's some more projects with brown paper packaging. I just wanted to show you, obviously the gesso looks so good. The doilies look so good up against it. There's some faux stamps I made from a magazine image onto the paper bag. I did some stamping, and here are some paper corners. They can be used as little side tucks, or just actual corners like applied to the top. You can like basically just secure over the page like this, and if you don't glue it down completely, you can tuck stuff in underneath. But it's just another little thing. Like, I loved mass making these and I totally forgot all about them. So I just want to show you at the bottom here, this is what I have a tendency to kind of write. So a little description of the project, or the name of the project, and then basically, so paper bag decorations look incredible, white gesso over top, contrast is gorgeous. You know, journaling card includes the stenciled modeling paste. And just to give myself a point of reference for actually how I decorated these. So even if you, because realistically, you're obviously not going to want to put all of your ephemera from a single project in this idea book. It would bulk up way too fast, and you're going to want it for your other things. But if you write yourself a description, you'll be able to go back and remember all of the things you made, even if you, all of the different variations, even if you don't include them in your idea book. I was obviously really having fun with grid journaling when I first started this idea book. Here's some more grid journals. The point of this was just showing that you could stamp grids with a stamp pad instead of taking the time to measure out your grids and decorate them. I don't know what the point of this was. I think I just was doodling with some acrylic paint pens that I was trying out, and that's okay. Not everything has to have a purpose. Here's some more grid journals. I have to fill these in, but I loved how these came out with the pink, and this clear washi tape was just like primo. So I just put stamping, watercolor, washi tape, acrylic paint pens. So I'll probably do a similar theme in these. Now the next few pages I left blank. You'll see some of these are decorated pages. Some of them are plain white pages, or aligned pages. And I just find when you include a variety of papers and a variety of shapes and sizes, it allows you to pick a page that will fit your project best. And that way you can accumulate a ton of different projects in your idea book. If you have a really small little project, maybe you'll put it on here. You don't want to take up an entire huge page. And if you number your pages sequentially prior to working your idea book, you already know what page you're working on, what page has what. And then realistically, if you keep up with it, you can go back and put it on your index right away. I hope that makes sense. Here's two more. I really love this. This was some grid journals with some punch outs and some cream colored papers, gesso, stamping, mark making. Here I basically made a bunch of grid journals and I went around them with washi tape. So I drew them ahead of time but still lined out the washi tape. Really though, if you're like putting the washi tape out, you probably don't even need to draw them. I just really like the theme of all of these. I thought they were so colorful, and I went around all of the different grids with some gold metallic watercolor paint. Here's another example of a fold-out page where it's folded in many different sections. So if I have a really small project, I can put a project here and then put a project here. So see how I labeled this is 35, this is 34, and then this is 33. So essentially I can put 3 different projects on a single sheet of paper. So that's why I did it like that. Oh, and then 30 and 32. 31. You see that? So for those of you who think that you have ugly pages you don't know what to do with, realistically, a lot of the pages in this journal or in this idea book are going to get covered up anyways, and you may want those bright pages for certain things. So if you have a lot of construction or like leftover like pages that are of a reasonable size, you could totally use those in this book. Okay, this was a layout I did. It was my first layout, I think, in this idea book, and I was using a bunch of dried flowers, and I just made a collage with wrapping paper, a bunch of different things I had on my desk. It's kind of wild, like very basic. Probably not something I would make today. I don't know. I was kind of just trying to break in the book. So I was really excited about including these because I can't tell you how often I make paper clips and cannot remember what I made or how I made them. And so by actually getting to look at the paper clip, it gives you a great reference. I also wrote up there how I made some of these, the different kinds of paper clips, if any of them required any specific folds. Here I made a journal paper clip. I love this so much. Of course, though, I decorated upside down. That's why I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put this in the idea book. But look, it looks like an actual journal. See how cute this is? I was really excited about that one. Even more excited before I realized it was upside down. Okay, I made these envelope paper clips that actually required some measuring. They're like Valentine envelope paper clips. But I really liked it. But for example, I don't want to have to keep like measuring and like doing all this folding and forget. Like it's so easy to forget, like, because these have to be a very specific size and they have to be scored a very specific way. So I have a template in here with all the markings and the scoring. So when I come back to it, if I want to make them again, I literally just have to pull out this template and voila, that's it. That's the envelope I'm referencing. And look, I also have a template for like the paper doll dresses that I made, or I have some extras left over, and I use cupcake wrappers for the skirt, but I have all those details in there so I don't forget. I really like these layered circle paper clips, another like faux mini journal, and then these like little cottage paper clips are really cute too. If you are really looking to bulk up your paperclip stash, I do have a huge video I did. It's like an hour and 20 minutes long, I believe, on nothing but mass baking paperclips. I will link that above and in the description box. Look how absolutely chunky this is. I think that's really all I've done, and I haven't updated this in like 6, maybe 8 months now. So I'm gonna start getting some projects in here, and I will be filming along the way. All right, so now we have looked at some of the only few things I have put into this idea book. I want to share with you just the process I'm going to go through with adding the additional projects that I've done recently. So one of the big projects that I did recently that has really left me yearning to craft more with scraps is the process I went through to alter these. I took a bunch of boring scraps and went through a process of distressing them, and it was very easy. I just sprayed them down with, well, I will refer you to the video, but essentially you just need a cardboard box or a paper bag, and there are a couple of ways that I altered the scraps to make them a little easier to work with, and then just layered dyes, inks, laid them out, put gesso, did some stamping, and I got some like super interesting scraps that I am a lot more excited to craft with. So I think this was like, yeah, this old map. And because of the way you do it, you end up with color and a lot of different layers on the front and the back. So basically, depending on the project you're working on, you can choose to either use, you know, which side you want. But I'm gonna put a couple of examples down here, write a little bit, and I will show you that. So I went ahead and collaged a bunch of the altered scraps onto this page and then wrote exactly how I did this project. Basically that I put them in a box and I sprayed, you know, a bunch of ink and swirled them around and repeated that process. I specifically wrote a note to myself that I separated them into batches by like the color scheme that I wanted. You definitely don't want too many paper scraps in the box at a time, or else the process will take you forever, and many of them will not be fully covered or distressed with inks, even if you do it like a million times. And then I talked about the process of like, once they're all inked up, kind of laying them out on my desk and spreading some gesso on them, flicking some watercolor paint on them, and doing some different stamping, and talked a little bit about the different kind of papers that I use. So first project in the idea book. Oh, and not to forget, so this is page 97. So remember to go back and write on your index so that you can find things more easily. So I'm just gonna find 97, right here. And I'm just going to put dressed up / altered paper scraps. Almost forgot that part. Okay, on to the next project. So the next project I want to put in here are some of the paper buttons that I created. And I found this, there's a small little section. Obviously this is a page. This is a separate page. I thought I wanted to label that page separate because I think I just want this square. So you can always go back and add. I don't think I'm gonna want, like, I'm just gonna want this right here. I wish I would have labeled this a different page. So maybe I'm not gonna use that one. I want a small little section. Oh, here. This is perfect because I labeled all of these as separate pages. So we're gonna use 30. So I have these paper buttons, and most of these are decorated book pages with some washi tape over it. This is washi. This is layered paper with so just cardstock with some stickers. This I can tell you for sure is washi tape. This is washi tape with set eyelets. This is actually magazine paper, and then a digital image. Maybe I think I probably intended on gluing this down, because obviously this is kind of ugly and doesn't at all match the theme. I do love making paper buttons out of magazine images. This is washi tape on cardstock, and this is also washi tape over book pages in a repeating pattern. I really do like when the text kind of pokes out a little bit. So I'm just gonna arrange these, and I'm gonna do it in a way that leaves me a little bit of room, and I'm just gonna write a couple things about how I made these paper buttons. You don't have to have this many examples, obviously, and a lot of you probably don't want to put like your best pieces of created ephemera or too much because you want to save them for your other projects. So this is probably a little excessive. I just have a ton of paper buttons, so I don't mind. And at the end of the day, like, this still is going to be a book that's going to be really fun to look through. So it's not like a waste. What I will say was, when I created this idea book, it was purely to document my ideas and projects. I didn't put any thought at all into the cover, and it is here. I can actually glue while I'm talking. It is such an ugly cover, and it's not at all inspiring. But one of the reasons why I did that, aside from the fact that I just wanted to get this idea book done so I could get to working on it, one of the reasons why I left it so plain was because I actually thought maybe for the idea book itself, I would create a cover that using a process or materials that I've never used to create a cover before. So the actual idea book cover itself is a new project or a new idea. And so I was just like leaving myself open to doing that, and that's why it's like so plain. So I think I will eventually do that, and then this actually will be like a really, really cute journal to look back on. I know I was like at the beginning of the video, I was like, as soon as they see this cover, they're gonna shut this off because they're gonna be like, this is the ugliest, most like uninspiring journal ever. You guys are not gonna want to hear or see what I have to say or show. So if you've made it this long into the video, thank you for sticking around, and thanks for giving me another chance to make another impression on you. So with that being said, I'm going to finish gluing this down, and I'll show you guys the little tidbits that I read on the bottom. I just added a couple notes, basically how I constructed them by layering cardstock or book page on top of each other. And then I put stickers over them or layered washi tape. I used different punches to create different styles and shapes of buttons, and then other smaller punches to create the buttonholes, basically setting eyelets, putting cording or embroidery floss through them, and then to decorate them even further, adding some ink or some gold gilding wax to the edges. And so this is 30, so I will add that to the index, and then we will get on to the next project. Before we move on entirely, I just wanted to add this little paper clip, and I have plenty of other paper clips here, but this I used a paper punch, a circle punch, to kind of make this more interesting, and layered a bunch of different papers, went around it with stickles, and I just thought it was an interesting paper clip, so I'm going to add this here real quick. That is one of the really cool things to this book, is if you did leave a little extra room like I did here, which I'm not going to write anything else about this paper clip, it's self-explanatory, this one, but if you do leave some extra room, you can always add on if you do the project in a slightly different way or have another example you make later on. This next project was one of my absolute favorites. These are the recreated Tim Holtz inspired pieces. This is one of my favorite videos to make, and I ended up with some of the most beautiful pieces of ephemera. So I'm gonna put this down on a page, and I will show you guys the completed result. So I think I'm gonna put these down on, I'm already at page 348, but this was like the perfect size page to get all the pieces of ephemera that I wanted to. And I just think like all of these that I picked have at least white borders, and they just really stood out nicely up against this cardstock like brown papery background. So I'm just gonna put these down, and I am gonna tell you guys, this was one of my most favorite projects. If you didn't see the video, I highly recommend, well, of course I'd recommend it, it's my video, but what I did, I pulled out a couple of packs of the Tim Holtz ephemera, and some of them, of course, can't really be recreated, like photographs and things like that, but I found like some really, really cool, obviously this is a, like, why do I keep wanting to say chipboard? Paint swatch, something like that. Why am I having a mental block right now? But there were some swatches in there of paint, a lot of like bugs and butterfly type of slides, a lot of tickets, and a lot of like parcel pieces of ephemera, a lot of kind of stamped things that look like they would have gone through the mail. And of course these aren't Tim Holtz pieces, but I feel like they do look like Tim Holtz inspired stuff. Now some of you are going to recognize these stamps and you're going to say, oh my gosh, you totally cheated, like some of those are Tim Holtz stamps, so of course they look like ephemera, Tim Holtz ephemera. I thought the point was that you didn't have to go out and buy stuff. So a couple of these are Tim Holtz stamps, and I did do a lot of stamping. However, a lot of the stamps that I used for this project were from AliExpress and Amazon and were really, really cheap. I personally have several of his stamps. I love them. They are some of my favorite stamps, but you can find many, many, many of stamps like it on discounted sites. So, and there is going to be some extra space on this page. I'm fine with that because I had so much fun making these. I have no doubt I will be recreating some of the ephemera again, and I will have some more room to put some other pieces down on. Again, the process for making all of these was really, really simple. More than anything, the video is just to show you, highlight specific examples of the Tim Holtz packs that I felt like you could easily make at home with kind of like bare bones supplies. And I thought some of you would really appreciate that. Even those of you who do buy Tim Holtz ephemera on a regular basis, I think can appreciate this video, because we've all been there where we have expensive ephemera. We maybe don't really want to use all of it, or we just burn through it really quickly. And by making mass making some of it in its likeness, we can have really pretty pieces of ephemera to put in our journals and not worry about running out of stuff. And also I like the challenge of making something that looks as cool as the Tim Holtz ephemera, and honestly I just find his pieces really inspiring, and so yeah, it was a really, really fun process for me. So I'm just going to write, and I think just to make things really interesting, I'm actually going to do this with a white pen I have sitting here on my desk. So I'm all done filling out this page. I put a list of the intended name of the project that I did, or what piece that it was inspired after. I'm going to purposefully leave this page next to it blank. I'm sure I'll be making a ton more, and I'll probably want, since that's a ticket and a type slide and a swatch card, maybe I'll pick several more examples of different pieces of ephemera I've recreated. So if you think you're going to want to go back and add a bunch more things, maybe leave the page next to it blank. So I think that's the value in this, in already having your pages numbered and kind of jumping around a little bit. It just makes it more practical. You guys probably won't be at all surprised that somehow I've managed to add more doodles to this book, but I can't help myself because I was practicing my watercolor doodle mushrooms, and I've never included those umbrellas before. That was a new project I did this spring, and that little thing right there, well, I don't even know what it is, and my point was sometimes they can just be doodles. They don't actually have to be anything. So here in my book, I actually labeled it Watercolor Doodles, a Nothing Doodle, Mushrooms, and Spring Umbrellas. These mason jar charms are so small, I think I'm going to add them to the back of the paper button page. See this little section, 31? Yeah, I think I'm gonna add them here. Obviously, there will be extra room, and I will just have to add to this when I end up making more of these mason jar charms. So the top jar I actually backed with, well, I put a piece of cardstock down so that I could attach the bulb pin so that it was just kind of placed in my journal as intended to be used, because these are supposed to be journal charms. Now the second one, I did not set an eyelet or add any charm yet, so, and honestly it was better that I could just lay it flat in this journal. But I just put, you know, hooked on to something as intended. Here you have a bulb pin, and I did add some seed beads to some of them. I talked about some of the ways to customize these. You know, obviously these have different lids. All of them started with a loosely doodled jar, some watercolor added. That was kind of the basic structure. And then I decorated these all differently by, obviously this one has burlap and a little fabric topper, kind of like you would see along the lids of a real mason jar. This obviously is washi tape to simulate lemons being in a mason jar. And there are a ton of different ways to decorate these. So I will be adding this to the index, and we will get on to the next project. So this layout right here is an example of one of my favorite journaling cards that I've recently made. It involves taking index cards and distressing them with inks and dyes and stuff. I added some gold gilding wax and Tim Holtz distress crayons, and did some stamping, and then I added digital images, and I love the way these kind of either come off the page or overlap with each other. I adore this. I did think about creating a pocket and adding the journaling cards to them, and that way I can just add more, you know, add as many as I want. But you have to understand that, like, when you do that, you're gonna bulk this up, and so much of this is empty. I don't know how much room I'm realistically going to have. This might get so chunky I'm unable to like work in it comfortably any longer or write in it. So I wanted to kind of limit myself now. Some of the other pieces of ephemera that I have that do have something written or decorated on the back, I will obviously have to put them into a pocket, and I recommend you considering that when you're deciding how large you want your journal to be or how many pages that you bind into the journal. But anyways, I'm going to glue this down, and then I want to show you guys some new pieces of magazine ephemera that I recently made. So if you guys didn't see my recent magazine ephemera video, these are some of the pieces I came up with, using magazine images. So there was a bunch of fish pages. It's hard to explain without all the context of like all the other cards, but I just put down a watercolor base and fussy cut out the different shapes of fishes. It was like in a Better Home and Gardens magazine. One of them was like a door hook. It was a ton of just like ocean themed stuff. So I put down a watercolor base and added the magazine images over top and went around them with some charcoal pencil just to create an entire like ocean style journaling card set. This I found, again, I think in the same like Better Home and Gardens magazine. I found a ton of paint buckets, and it all had next to them, like, this one is obviously Dusky Taupes, and there were a ton of other, like, you know, something blues and something this. And so I cut out these paint cans and I made swatch cards out of them, and I tried to mix the color of the, like an approximate color that would go with the paint cans, and splatter it on first. And this has to be one of my favorite pieces of ephemera. So you know those old like cigarette cards like the Players cigarettes. Well, this was a magazine image, and I thought this would be like a perfect size like cigarette card. So I just did that and labeled it. Very simple. This one was a Polaroid. Well, the intention was a Polaroid. I got a little crazy with it. It was an image from a Nat Geo magazine taken from like a frosted lens, and I thought it was pretty stunning. I made a label for it just that says blue skies with my label maker. I added some washi to the top and the bottom, some gold gilding wax, and I made a postcard out of it. So some of these, you know, with the decorated back, I am gonna create a pocket specifically for them. Speaking of Polaroids, this was a big, huge, oversized Polaroid inspired by this image of a couch that I probably normally would just throw away, and yet again, you look at it through a different lens and all of a sudden there's something beautiful. I added, obviously this isn't your standard Polaroid, I added some washi and some gold gilding wax around it, so you don't have the standard kind of white edges, but nevertheless, to me, this still looks like a Polaroid. I added some text at the bottom like you may see with the conventional Polaroid, and I thought this was perfect. Here is a faux oversized button, actually using a paint can image, and I set some eyelets, added some cording, and stenciled some music notes over top because I thought the gold gilding wax looked amazing up against this burgundy paint can. This was a picture of a image in Nat Geo of a tarantula, and I made a stamp out of it. Put it on some brown paper packaging, and this oversized stamp I think looks really cool. This is a cluster of some magazine images I got from one of my dive magazines, and it was just I had already cropped the image down, and this was just a bunch of the excess, so I labeled it on top of each other to make a cluster, and then added plain paper that I stamped over top of each of them to make them just a little bit more interesting. This, I'm not sure what this is. I fussy cut out a horse, I collaged some things to the background, and I did really like how this turned out. So just for the purposes of adding the backgrounds of different like textiles that I thought was really interesting and backing it with book page, I am gonna add it in here. This was a map of a, it was formulated to look like a map of a subway, but instead it's all the different languages that people speak. And I thought that was really interesting, so I sewed it up and kind of made it like a Polaroid style, and that would just be another example of a Polaroid using an image that you wouldn't necessarily consider to be Polaroid worthy image. And then this, I was like, I was stunned by how beautiful these were, but these were black and white images that I got in a magazine and with my label maker. So these were all taken in downtown New York City, so I added that and then just created a date pretend down at the bottom to make it look more realistic and turn many of these into postcards. So I love these black and white images, and I'm definitely going to add this to my spread as well. So I have page 46 and 47 here, and they're all taken up with magazine style ephemera. There's that button, so I glued many of these down and added a description, a little bit about it. Not only am I adding descriptions about it, but I'm also trying to include some ideas for future projects. Well, I mean, obviously cigarette cards, like it's as simple as they get. Notice how I kind of wrote to the side to leave myself room for an additional piece of ephemera here if I want. Again, wrote to the side here. Wrote a little bit about the horse to the left. Fussy cut textiles in the background. And then I was running out of space for sure, and these Polaroids are huge, so what I ended up doing was making a pocket. And if you run out of room to write and you want to write more of a description, the best, easiest way around that is to write your description or write what is in the pocket. And then of course, since this is an idea book and you're not actually using this in a journal, feel free to write on the back of them like journal about the process of making each of these pieces of ephemera. That's a perfect way to save yourself space as well. And then you have it directly on the piece of ephemera, or maybe you're journaling about future projects you want to do with similar themes. So I'm going to tuck all of this magazine ephemera away, and then we will move on to our next project. I have this scrappy swatch here that I made by, they're snippet rolls, but they were on packing tape, as you see here. It's a very easy way to get a snippet roll going. So I'm going to put that down here. I'm also going to include a pocket with these altered playing cards, because I obviously want to be able to flip them over and see that they're playing cards. So I'm going to do that real quick. So I actually decided to separate these because this is the altered scrap snippet roll, and I think I'm going to want to put other different snippet rolls on this page later. But this is the importance of keeping an idea book. Let me show you an example. I struggled so hard making these. These were supposed to be easy snippet rolls because you're putting your collage pieces down on packing tape. What happened was, and I love the idea, I love the look of a sewn snippet roll, so I insisted on forging ahead with this. But what happened was I would collage the pieces down, I'd add a little glue stick and stick it to the packing tape, and when I would run this through the sewing machine, my needle would get gummed up and the thread would break or bunch up, and it was so frustrating. And this little thing, I don't know why I thought to do it, but I had some nail polish remover on my desk, and I thought, what if I just clean the needle in between each snippet roll? And what do you know it, by doing this, by just every time I sewed one of these pieces, I would clean the needle with rubbing alcohol, and that basically resolved the problem. And I had totally forgotten that I did that until I just sat down to update my idea book. So that's the importance of adding those little tidbits so you can reference. You don't have to learn the hard mistake twice. I also look at how I could have glued this little snippet down entirely, but by adding the paper clip, I'm securing it but folding it over so that I can see later that, because you're like, oh, well, I'll remember that. Well, you don't always remember that. And by doing it like this, I can see how, yes, this isn't just a regular snippet roll like I have always made in the past. The backing is packing tape. And that was the idea for the project, so I don't want to hide that. I want that to be very clear. I am just going to add these altered cards to another little page here off to the side. Again, I'm only adding 2 of these altered playing cards. I wrote a description. That's going to be the pocket that's going to house them. But the point is I'm going to make some different style altered playing cards later and add them to this altered playing card page. See, just like that, and plenty of leftover room to add a ton of other different altered playing cards. You may be wondering why such a big page for 2 simple collaged tags. Well, I have some big plans for this page, and I'm going to be putting a ton more examples of different tags on this page. These are collaged mixed media tags, and because they have decoupage and collaged elements, I guess just collaged elements, but because they have collaged elements on both sides, obviously I don't want to hide the one side. I love how these turned out. So I'm going to be putting them in this. Actually, I should probably wait till it's dry. Did I? Oh no, I was like, oh no, did I glue the top down? Oh no. Okay, no, we're good, we're good. All right, so I'm going to shove these in here, and then we will be on to our next project. For our last example, guys, I want to show you why this idea book comes in such handy. When I was making Polaroids, which you may remember, it was a recent video, I painstakingly detailed for each size of Polaroid you may want to make what the actual size of the Polaroid is compared to the dimension of the inner frame. And I made myself a bunch of templates so I wouldn't have to keep measuring them. And I made this reference card so I wouldn't have to keep, you know, fussing around with the ruler trying to figure out what the dimensions of each were. Next time I want to make a Polaroid, I don't have to do all that research on the internet or go digging to find an old Polaroid so I can figure out the measurements or just wing it. I can simply open up my idea book, refer back to this card, and I will know exactly the dimensions of the Polaroids that I want to make. Look at this swatch paint Polaroid. Isn't that incredible? And just this little, like, I can't even paint. All I did was dab some acrylic paint on and draw some stems. And it's just the crisp white borders just make everything look so good. So I'm really loving how this was set up. So in addition to this reference here, I also have this template that I printed out online. Perfect, right? So I found a page where I could glue it to where it is able to hinge freely and open up. I have this reference here, and then I have a pocket which I just put a little bit of washi tape over top, and I have my Polaroids here. I wasn't really, I still have plenty, like normally I would use the pocket to write on to save space, but there's plenty of room on the back of this template here that I can write on. And I am just gonna go ahead and put my Polaroids right in here. Lovely. I am loving this, guys. This is a perfect use of a page. Like, this is like the perfect example of needing a point of reference so that you can always go back to something that you created in the past without a whole lot of headache, and you can focus more of your energy on creating. And of course, I will go back and update my index. I'm actually loving how this is coming together. It looks like I actually put some time and thought into keeping up with this. I've added a ton more lines, and I really got to find that paperclip I was using to hold this together. The hardest part is to flip back to the index page. Maybe there's like a smarter system, and actually that smarter system may be adding one of those clear plastic protector pages and just like sequentially filing, like just having the like multiple pieces of paper that you take out of that clear protective system. Oh, that actually would have been a really smart idea. And then writing on them that way, and that way you don't have this fold. But I kind of like the look of the fold out chaotic mess. It would be better if it were paper clipped, what can I say? But I am loving how this is coming along. I'm really just enjoying the nostalgia of flipping through and looking at past projects that I forgot about. It's funny how quickly we forget about things we've made, you know? Especially if we don't look at our other journals regularly, if we're not going back through them. So I'm really pleased with this. I think I will be doing another idea book update in the future when I've accumulated enough projects. I want to, now ideally you would be going back and updating this after every project, and if it's a really kind of intense detailed project with measurements or something like that, definitely do it after you do your project. But otherwise, realistically, I'm not going to do it. I'm kind of bad like that. I'm not going to do it after every project. So I will be doing another idea video in the future when I feel like I've accumulated enough things that I want to go back and update this. That is, if you guys want to see another one. If you enjoyed this and got some ideas from this, please let me know in the comments below that you would like to see another one, or maybe no, maybe just the videos are enough. You'd want to reference the full video anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Drop me a comment below if you wouldn't mind, and let me know how you feel about these idea book updates. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this and you want to see more of Ink and Papyrus, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you the next time.